All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? My name is Chris, and this is my channel, We Love Comics. And I actually got a couple of comments and some private messages from some of my subscribers, which I always appreciate. And they were telling me that a fellow comic book collector slash YouTuber, and I won't mention their name because it's just not what this is about, made a video and a couple of people asked my opinion about it. Now, I haven't watched the video. I don't watch the person's videos, and that's perfectly fine. Everybody's entitled to watch or like whatever they want. But I want to address this topic because I think it's very important. And it comes to more than just comic book collecting, in life in general. Now, I've been making a slogan for a long time, so I don't know if this comment or video was directed towards me. Like I said, I haven't watched the video, so I don't know the full context other than what people told me, and they told me what basically the premise of the video was about. I haven't watched it. So it could be a lot of fair points, which I'm sure that individual will make some very good points. But I'm not sure if I'm the one who originated that slogan. I use it a lot. I've been using it since I was back in New York years ago. So I don't know if I'm the one that coined it, but it doesn't matter. I use that slogan all the time, and that is, low grade is better than no grade. Now, from what I understand from people's emails and comments, that the video was basically saying you should get that out of your mindset. Well, you should always seek what's best in your life, of course. Settling is not always the favorite option, but sometimes it may be the only option. I'll give you a couple of examples, not just of comics. Now, if somebody is very well off financially, it's going to be very easy for them to say things like, well, don't settle for the lowest, get the best that you can. Which, I mean, I would agree with. Get the best that you can. But not all of us that invest or collect have so much money that they can get the highest grade possible. And sometimes the highest grade possible is a page of a book. Now, let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean. A person like, for example, let's just use Elon Musk, who has lots of money. Elon Musk is never going to buy a 2002 Ford F-150 pickup with 200,000 miles, even if it could be sold for $150 in barely working condition. He's going to buy, at the very least, a brand new car. It doesn't have to be a Lamborghini. It doesn't have to be the best car in the world. But he's not buying some used car with 200,000 miles on it that's over 10 years old. Now, a person that may have just gotten out of college, or a person that may be a single parent, or somebody that just financially does not have many options, I'm sure would love to get a 2023 brand new car, which the average price now is going above $25,000 and up. Some people may not have the credit to be able to even finance something like that. So they may have the only option of being able to buy that Ford F-150 pickup with over 200,000 miles because $150 is in their budget range, and they can afford that and maybe spend some money to fix it up and utilize it for the time being. Let's use Elon Musk again for an example. Elon Musk, I'm sure, when and if he dates, is going to probably find the most attractive person that he could find that is interested in him. I seriously doubt somebody like Elon Musk or somebody of that wealth stature is going to go out on the streets looking for a homeless person who is unclean, who is living on the streets and may be a nice human being, but they're not going to go out of their way looking for somebody like that. My point is, and let's get on to comics with this. If you have lots of money or lots of credit or both, it's easier to say things like, don't ever get that mindset of low grade is better than no grade. And I understand the philosophy behind it, because you don't want to have, and I can understand, without even watching his video, I can understand his mindset is never settle for the bottom, go for the best that you can. And that's wonderful advice. But it's not advice that's going to work for everybody. So let's just stick to comics. And let me put on my video camera, and I'm going to show you a couple examples. Alright, so give me a second. We want the video camera working. Alright, we're going to try this again. I may not be able to show you. Third time should be the charm. There we go. Third time is a charm. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Now, those of you who have been watching my channel know that financially I've been in some interesting situations. Now, of course, I'm always striving to become better. I've put a lot of money into investments. Some of them have not panned out. Some of them are in the process of panning out. Some will take a couple years before they pan out. I have a lot of investment in comic books. There will be some that will make me a pretty penny, but it would be foolish for me to sell them now because they'll only get more valuable as we go. But right now, I don't have thousands of dollars to be buying something very expensive. Would I love to? Of course. Who would not want a 9.8 Hulk 181, for example? How many amongst you that are watching right now, whether it's live or later on, how many of you have the, let's just say it's $125,000 as of now. Let's just say $100,000 for a Hulk 181 9.8. How many of you have that money available? So, would we love to get a 9.8? I sure would. If I won the lottery, I'd be buying one. But never underestimate the value of something that is in lower grade. Even if you are just buying it because you want to own it. It doesn't have to be investments. But who wouldn't want a $150,000 Lamborghini if they had the money? Or they had the ability to use credit to get that Lamborghini? How many of you that are watching this right now own a Lamborghini? How many of you would find a Lamborghini that was once valued at $150,000 and has 200,000 miles on it, got into an accident, but the frame is still sturdy, it can be fixed and repaired. If somebody was selling it on Craigslist, they wanted to get rid of it for $5,000, but needs a lot of work. Do you know how many people would line up to buy it just for the frame alone? As a matter of fact, there's some eBay channel where somebody bought a, I think it was like a $350,000 Ferrari that was in a fire and was completely burned out inside and out. And they bought it just for the frame. And I think they paid around $20,000 for it. If a 9.8 is $100,000 and that its peak, if that ends up its peak, even if you had the money to buy it, if it doesn't go any higher, you're wasting your money because it's not being utilized. It also takes longer to sell more expensive anything, which means your money is now in limbo doing nothing. There is a reason why places like Costco and Sam's Club and other places like that do very well, because they sell in bulk, but they sell cheaper, so they have faster turnaround, which means higher volumes, and instead of things sitting on the shelf that may be worth more money, they're turning around and selling something for nickels and dimes and still making a profit. You have to go with what works for you and what makes you happy. If you ever notice on my channel, I've never told people this is what you must do. What I do is I share my experience, and you may resonate with it from time to time. You may not resonate with it. You may think it's hogwash. You may think it's great advice. But I don't say this is what you must do. Now, if you won the lottery tomorrow and you want to buy the best of everything, that's great. If you have lots of money and you can do that, that's wonderful. I am never going to say that somebody that has a trust fund or somebody who worked very hard and built up their empire and went from nothing to becoming maybe a multimillionaire, that they don't deserve the fruits of their labors. Of course you do. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm jealous because somebody has extra money that they can spend to be able to afford higher things. That's the beautiful thing about a capitalist, or what was once a capitalist society, is the harder you work, the more benefits you can get. It doesn't guarantee. Hard work does not guarantee success. There have been many times people have worked very hard and lost everything. You know, just look at the Great Depression. How many millionaires lost everything? And I'm sure many of them were hardworking people. I'm sure many of them had lots of money. I bet many of them were smart investors. But then it only takes an event to take everything away. But never let anybody tell you, oh, well, this is taboo, so don't do it. Whether you like the person or not. Because this individual and I had a scenario probably 7 or 8 years ago. And I'll get into the details here in case people ask, because I have no ill will towards this person. But there was a video this person made about 7 or 8 years ago where the information was just wrong, and it would have affected people who watched. Because he's a likable person, he's a friendly person, but the information he gave is wrong. Now, looking back, what I should have done is I should have private messaged him and said, just want to let you know the video you made is not good information. It's actually wrong. I don't remember what it was because this is, like I said, about at least 7 years ago. I should have private messaged them. But what I did was I made a video saying that this was wrong, which basically made the person probably look bad, which in my retrospect, I know was not the smartest thing to do. I did not have malice intent, but I should have done it better. So I own up to my part. Now, before this situation, him and I were actually pretty good friends. We actually had each other's phone numbers. We talked on the phone. As a matter of fact, whether the person wants to admit it or not, I was actually responsible for his channel starting to blow up because I was giving it advice because he was just doing videos, but he was getting 10 or 20 views. I told him to make sure you do thumbnails and do this, that, and the other thing, and all of a sudden his channel exploded. Now, I called him and asked for forgiveness, and I apologized, and I said I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. So I own up for my mistake. You know, no person's perfect, and to err is human. But the person not only did not ever accept my apology, refused to even talk to me. So at that point, I just let it go. Bygones be bygones. Have a wonderful life. I made the mistake. I didn't maliciously intend to cause harm, even though that's what happened. When I realized the mistake I made, I took the video down, and like I said, I sent them an apology, which the person declined to even respond to. That's fine. Everybody has the right to be upset. But if somebody's upset years later over a misunderstanding and a mistake that I owned up for, that's fine. But again, everybody's entitled to their opinions. If he fully believes, and I know he works out, he works hard, he's built himself an empire, and it's well deserved. Again, no ill wills. I have praise and nothing but utmost respect for somebody that refuses to give up and works hard and ended up reaping the benefits. Now, I've worked very hard myself. I ended up selling my other house in New York, came up with the cash I needed to buy a house here in Florida. I gave myself 6 months to do it. I did it in 24 hours, came up with around $25,000, $30,000. I was going to give myself 6 months to do it. I came up with it within 24 hours. Moved out of nowhere to here. Ended up creating my own business. If you remember in the beginning of my channel here when I moved to Florida, I opened a comic book business in a flea market. And I started doing very well. But it got shut down due to the pandemic. I had other situations where I invested literally thousands of dollars into things that did not work. I did my research. I did my due diligence. But even when you do that, sometimes things just don't work out the way you planned. But again, I have so many investments in so many different areas because I believe in diversifying that a lot of them are for my future, so I won't touch them. I can, Like if I needed $10,000 right now, I could do a sale and make money. So it's not about that. But I don't want to just sell stuff just to have extra cash unless I'm going to utilize it for something like I did with that Hulk 1. Now that Hulk 1 is a 0.5 grade. It is in horrible condition, but I couldn't afford, and I was not willing to sell my future investments for a higher grade book that I feel is around the limits of where that book may go, maybe give or take another $1,000 or $2. Here's a Fantastic Four #1. This is a CGC 0.5 restored, light tanned off-white pages. It has a facsimile cover, so this was a coverless book. It's a 0.5 with slight restoration. A coverless book of Fantastic Four #1 goes for about $1,500 to $2,000 now. I paid a grand total of $457 for this book. At the time I bought it, which was probably about 2018, maybe about 2017, 2018, when I told people I bought this book, you have no idea how many people laughed at me. How many people made a comment of saying, oh, you're crazy. How many of you right now, if you saw this book on sale on eBay for a buy it now at $457, would buy it in a heartbeat? I wouldn't sell it for that price. How many of you, if you saw this listed on eBay for $999, would buy it in a heartbeat? If you can only afford a certain amount, don't worry about what other people's opinions are. There are plenty of people, and I'm not just singling out one person. I watch numerous channels where they want nothing but 9.8s, and if they get a 9.6, you'd think their family just disappeared and their house just washed away in a storm. There are some out there, and I'm not saying this is what that person is, so don't misconstrue what I'm about to say, but there are people in this world, and I'm not just going to say comics. I'm going to say the sports industry, the car industry, the coin industry, the silver and gold industry, collectibles in general, where there are some people that have an elitist nature about them, that look down on the peasants who can only afford the smaller scraps of collectibles or items. Again, I paid $457 for this book back in about 2017, 2018. Multiple people laughed at me and made fun of it and said they'd never do it. I guarantee you right now, if this was listed for $500, it would sell within 30 seconds of listing if it was a buy it now. This was before I ended up buying my Fantastic Four #1 2.5. I never thought I would get a second copy, let alone a first copy. Let me give you another example. You've seen this recently. My Superman #2. I spent a total of $385 on this book. The seller, who was not the original owner, thought that this cover was a facsimile. I still have the video up today when I unboxed this back in New York. Again, probably around 2017, 2018. If you want to look it up, I think it's titled The Oldest Comic I Own. And I remember opening this and I said, boy, if this is a facsimile cover, they did one heck of a job. It ends up, it was a real cover, restored, but it's at a 4.0 that has, it color touches, reglossed, and cover trimmed. $385 for Superman #2 restored. How many people would line up to get that? But I took the chance on it, even knowing if the cover was fake or a reproduction. I still bought it because I thought it was worth it. My Hulk one that I bought for $3,200 had 31 people that placed bids on it. So other people thought that was a good item to get. Now, let's go to something like Superman #1. There are people who cannot even afford a coverless page. If you look, I think there's a let's go with Batman #1. There is a Batman #1 that is complete but coverless, selling for $32,500. How many of you right now have $32,500 for a book that would go, if you sent it to CGC, would come back NG, which is no grade, because it's a coverless book, and spend $32,500 for it? That means a 0.5 would probably cost about $40,000 to $50,000, maybe even higher. There are people who will buy a page of that book. I have a page of Detective Comics #27 because I know I could not afford even a coverless version of that comic. So does that mean, well, since I can't afford a high-grade book, that means I should just never get it and never own it? Superman #2. I own it. Whether this was a fake cover or not, which ends up it is real, so the person that said they weren't sure was actually wrong and they did not do any research. They should have graded it instead of assuming. It's restored, but it's complete, and I took the chance on it, even at the time when I thought when I was buying it that it was a coverless book that had a facsimile cover, which is actually interesting because the original staples were still in it and the cover was connected. So the cover wasn't loose, and the staples are still attached to the book. So I don't know how they figured this was a reproduction cover. I guess they assumed it because the whole thing was color touched on the front and reglossed and trimmed. So I guess they assumed that meant a reproductive cover. But not for nothing, who would take a reproductive cover and do that? Because here's a reproductive cover. See how nice it is? No one's going to trim a reproductive cover. No one's going to gloss a reproductive cover. No one's going to put color touches on a reproductive cover. But I took the chance on it, even knowing it was a low grade, and it became so much better. Here's another book. I spent $360 on it. Superman #13. Only a 1.5. But you know what? It's the first mention of Jimmy Olsen, although they didn't mention his last name. So it's the actual Jimmy Olsen's appearance, his first time being named. Because before that, I think he was just called Boy or some Paper Boy or something like that. But it's basically the first appearance of a named character that is well known. Paid $360 for this 1.5. Guarantee you I could sell it for a lot more than that. Here's another book. I paid $620 for it. This is a 0.5 Tales to Astonish #27. First appearance of Ant-Man. Now, the reason it's a 0.5 is it does not have a back cover. You hang this on the wall, you're only seeing the front. Comic's still intact. Would I have liked a 5.0, 6.0, 9.0? Sure. But I'll tell you this much, I ain't spending $627 on one of those books. Promise you I could sell it for more than $620, even at a 0.5. Here's another one I spent $1,000 on. Superman #5. Which before the Superman #2 was my earliest Superman book. Sorry, there's some glare. A 1.8 CGC. Paid $1,000 on it. Complete book. It's got a Luthor appearance. It's got a full page ad for Batman #1. And Star Comics #1. I own 3 copies, all low grade. Avengers #1, I paid $1,394. It's only a 1.5. Somebody cut out the Hulk. You know what? Most people that say they won't buy it means that I don't have to worry about being outbid for it. Here's another book I promise you very few people own. Submariner number 2 from the Golden Age. It's only a 1.5. This is, I believe, the second ever Stan Lee story. There's glue along the spine. It's only a 1.5. $979 for this book. I guarantee you I could sell it for way more than $979. It is low grade. Would I love a 5.0 of this book? Sure. Submariner number 2 with either the second, because they can't confirm really the order. So it's either the second or third ever Stan Lee story. This was from 1941. And I'll just show one more. I paid $320 for this book. Daredevil number 1 at a 1.5. It's got a big piece missing in the back here, in the back cover. You don't think I could sell this for about $1,000 or more? Look at books that are 0.5 or even no grade or even pages. Look how many dozens of people will bid on them. How many bids they have if it's not a buy it now. If it's an auction. Like I said, the Hulk 1 that I know lots of people probably would never buy because it's not in the best of condition in the world. I was the first to admit it. But there were 30 to 31 other people that placed bids on that trying to get that book. They didn't seem to mind. When it comes to your life, it's always good to get other people's advice. It's always good to hear other people's opinions. But don't ever let anyone tell you what you're doing is wrong, is bad, is maybe unproductive, unless you will feel that way as well. I am proud of every one of these books. Not one of them is past, well, except for the Superman, not one of them is past a 2.0. Low grade, I own first appearance of Daredevil. Low grade, Golden Age Submariner issue number 2, either the second or third ever story of Stan Lee. 1.5 Avengers number 1, first appearance of the Avengers. Early Superman, complete, unrestored, 1.8. First appearance of Ant-Man ever, 0.5. I also am waiting to have come back my Amazing Spider-Man number 1, which is incomplete, but I paid about $380 for. Superman number 13, the first time Jimmy Olsen is mentioned by name. They just name him Jimmy. They don't say Olsen yet. Fantastic Four number 1. First appearance of the Fantastic Four, which, by the way, has not yet had a movie come out. When they make the movie, if they kind of go the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 route and not do what they've been doing in most of Phase 4, you don't think that book's going to continue to have more people reach out and want it? And then, like I said, last but not least, this came back as an actual, genuine cover, which, again, like I said, the staples are intact on this book. The cover is connected to the book. How the person thought it was a facsimile cover blows my mind, but I thank God that person did not do their research enough to figure it out. So even though when I bought it, I was assuming it was a facsimile cover because they said it was. But how many times have people not known what they were selling, or maybe even purposely lied about what they were selling? Because I had a Hulk 180 that had a picture of the Marvel value stamp. And when I bought it, I always double check. And when I opened it, that Marvel stamp wasn't there. It was cut out. So sometimes people lie. Some people just don't know. But I took the chance on it. Now, I'm not saying take a chance on a lower grade because you'll have something like this happen. That's the first time that's ever happened. All my other low grades, they're staying the way they're supposed to be. Like that Hulk 1, all I care about is it's complete and it's genuine. I know it's a 0.5. And I know it's a very poor condition 0.5. But that will mean I own the first appearance of Hulk. Because if you look at sold items, page number 2 of Hulk number 1 just the page, sold for $935. It was in the 900s, but I don't remember the exact amount. So somebody paid almost $1,000 for one page. And I bet you they were happy to own it. There are people buying one page of Hulk 181 now. Go look at how many of them for sale. So, again, I understand without watching the person's video, I understand they're probably saying, don't settle for less. Always try and achieve more, which is great advice, and I cannot dispute that. But it's also easier for somebody to say it when they are in the success mode. You know, it's a lot easier, and I'm just saying in general, it's a lot easier for somebody to be generous, if they just won the lottery. But can you be just as generous when you have $5 in your pocket and you were going to buy a loaf of bread so you had something to eat? Would you give that away then? So, advice is only good if it makes sense for your needs, your wants, your desires, your situation. So, would everybody here who collects comics love to own a 9.8 Hulk 181? You'd be crazy to say no. How many people here could actually right now, if they saw it for $100,000, buy it now? How many of you would be the first one to hit buy it now and pay for it? Let's say a 0.5 comes up and somebody's selling it for $500 just to get rid of it. In the comment section, if you watched this far, and if you have, thank you. How many of you, if you saw a coverless... No, let's go with a coverless. A coverless Hulk 181 for $495 and free shipping, buy it now. How many of you would buy it in a heartbeat? Now, if you already own the book, you may not want to spend that money. Me personally, if I knew a coverless version is worth $1,000 and I could buy it for $500, well, that's a smart business move. Because then that means I could instantly turn around and double my money if I wanted to, or hold on to it and have even more money. And because a lower grade means a cheaper price, you are going to have more people to not only be able to afford to buy it, but who would be willing to buy it. Because there's a difference between wanting to own a Lamborghini and being able to afford owning a Lamborghini. Because remember, not only does it cost the money to buy the Lamborghini, but just imagine how much higher your insurance costs will be. Let's say you have that 2000 and let's say just the 2000 Ford F-150. The insurance for that car is probably $400 a year. You'll probably spend $1,000 a month, if not more, in insurance for a Lamborghini. Probably higher than that. Probably $5,000 a month. So if you have the money, God bless you. Get the best that you can get. If you're somebody that thinks they can work harder and harder and through these difficult times be able to break through and be one of the few that can make it to the top and be able to afford the spoils, you have my blessing. I'm not jealous. I'm very proud of my collection. And I have comics that range from coverless to 10s. I own 2 10 graded CGC 10 books. They're both Teenage Mutant Turtles, those bigger ones that they did, issue number 2. But they're 10s. I have 4 9.9s. I have more 9.8s than I can shake a stick at. So I have some higher grade books. But when it comes to very key books, I cannot see myself spending $30,000, $40,000 on a book right now. Because timing is everything. Like, for example, I bought X-Men #1, CGC 3.0. That book right now is, I think, selling between $9,000 and $12,000. Well, I bought it back in 2017 for $2,000. At the time, it was probably worth about $2,500. But I wasn't basing it on where it is. I wasn't basing it on where it was. I was basing it on where it was going. I have a Hulk 181 at an 8.5. It was originally an 8, but I saw it had pressable defects, cracked it open, got it pressed, and it came back an 8.5. I paid $1,583 for that book. That book right now would sell between $10,000 and $12,000. You don't think I can make money on that? Buy what you love. Buy what you can afford. Don't worry if somebody else... I don't care if every single person that watched me unbox this comic way back when said they would never buy this book. And I was crazy for buying it. Or stupid to buy it. Or you deserve better than that. I don't care what anybody else says. They're entitled to their opinion. But their opinions do not influence me. I bought this book thinking that it was going to be a 0.5 with a facsimile cover. Needle in a haystack find. But here's one that didn't change, and I will not crack it open. It's got an actual facsimile cover. See how perfectly clean that is? Because it's just a copy of the cover. So they want it to make it look good. But it's a 0.5 CGC. Restored. And even the front and back cover are not the same. This is not even the original back cover. Not even the original facsimile back cover for this book. Guarantee you, there'd be a line of people buying this for $500. There'd be a line of people buying this for $1,000. There'd be a line of people buying it for $1,500. There would be a line of people to buy this book for $2,000. I own the first appearance of Fantastic Four #1. Now, like I said, I have a 2.5. But I got this one before that one. Never thinking I would get another one. To me, when I say low grade is better than no grade, to me that means it is better to own it than to never have it waiting for what if. Because, another example, just think financially. Let's say my X-Men #1, at the time I bought it, at $2,500, I paid $2,000. It was worth around $2,500. Let's say a person saw that book and said, well, they're selling it for $2,000. It's only worth $2,500. The Fox studios at the time are doing bad, so I have a hunch that the prices will go down, so I'm going to wait for a better opportunity. What happens when all of a sudden your opportunity to buy it no longer exists at the price you could have gotten it for? Because let's say you just decided at that point, I'm out of the comic book community, I'll come back in another 10 years, and I bet you that book will be worth $500, and I'll be glad I didn't get it. And they look to find out that book is now worth around $10,000. Well, they missed out on an opportunity because they were so worried about other people's opinions or what other people do or what other people might say. How many of you had the chance to buy something and live to regret it because you didn't pull the trigger? And I'll share one with you. Back in, I would say, the late 90s, I had an opportunity to buy an Amazing Spider-Man #1 for a grand total of $1,000. It would have probably been a 5 to a 6.0. Do you want to know why I didn't buy it? Because somebody wrote in pencil their name on the cover and on one other page. Small writing of some kid's name. You can't even get a coverless book for $1,000 anymore. And because I thought, well, a better comic will come along, I missed out and never got Amazing Spider-Man #1 until I found an incomplete, coverless version for $300 and change. Do you know how much a 5.0 Amazing Spider-Man #1 would be worth now? I guarantee you it's more than $1,000. I regret, if I had a time machine, I'd go back and buy it without even looking at it. I would have, because I remember him taking it off the back shelf. He allowed me to take it out and look at it, and I'm like, I got Amazing Spider-Man #1 in my hand. I had $1,000, which back in 1999, I believe it was around 1999, to have that much money was few and far between for me, and I put it back because I didn't like the little pencil mark on the cover and one of the pages. I would smack the living crap out of the past me for making that dumb mistake. So there are people who may convince you, well, I was going to buy this Batman #1, but it's incomplete, the centerfold is missing, and the cover is detached, and it's rusty staples, and there's water stains. I could have gotten Batman #1 for $10,000 off of somebody on Craigslist, and it was legit. But everybody says you shouldn't waste your money on low grades. They might make fun of me. I'm going to pass up on that opportunity. That would be the dumbest mistake you could make of your life if you are a person that is a smart investor. Because that's the first appearance of the Joker, and I also believe a cameo of the Catwoman, not in costume. But just the fact that it's Batman #1 from 1939, I believe. Could be 38, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 39. If you could buy that book, let's say a quarter of it was eaten by bugs, centerfold is missing, the cover is detached, the staples are rusty, there's water stains, the pages are brittle to tan. Somebody was selling it for $5,000. I would sell my car to get the money to buy that. You should always improve your life in every way you can. So I understand, like I said, I didn't watch his video, but I know his mentality, and it's a good one. Whether we had a dispute or not, I'm not going to turn around and say anything bad about a person that has very good character. I also have very good character, because even though I could make a mistake, I'll man up and own it and try and correct it. But I can only control what I do. I cannot control what others do. So I have nothing bad to say about this person. And without watching his video, I can almost guarantee that his video was basically saying, don't settle for the lowest common denominator, always strive for what's best. And that's wonderful. But if that was the case, everybody'd be like at the level of Elon Musk and Bill Gates. There are plenty of homeless people who probably tried to work very hard and ended up homeless. There are people that invested their life savings only for that life savings investment to fail on them. There are people that went from having nothing to winning the lottery and then ending up back into nothing because they just blew the money foolishly. Working hard is a great ethic, but it does not guarantee success. Like I said, all you have to do is just look at the example of the Great Depression. Many multimillionaires lost everything and jumped out of buildings and committed suicide. And I bet you they were smart people. I bet they were very knowledgeable, but still lost everything. So I would encourage, if that's what his video is about, I would encourage people to be the best that you can be. But also you have to be realistic. I right now cannot afford a $300,000 car. It would be foolish for me to buy one even if I had. Let's just say I sold all my comics and made $300,000. I would be an idiot to take that $300,000 and buy a car that just for the insurance alone I couldn't afford to continue to drive. It'd be foolish. Go within your means. Don't sell your house to buy Batman #1 and to spend it on a higher grade that you can't afford just for the look at me, look what I got mentality. Now again, I'm not saying anybody does that, but I'm not bragging about owning Fantastic Four #1. It's a .5, it's restored, it's got a facsimile cover. But I'm happy that I own the book. That's what matters to me. This is not a, oh, look what I have, look what you don't have. Because that's ridiculous. Anybody that looks down on somebody else's hard work, or maybe they thought was good fortune, if you look down on anybody from that, I don't care who you are, you're a snob. Plain and simple. And that's for anybody, anywhere, doing anything. If you look, look at how certain people in government and certain people in politics and Hollywood, look how they look at us, common people. I hate when people refer to us as ordinary or common. What makes them any different other than they have more pieces of fake fiat green-colored currency in their bank accounts? Does that make them better human beings? There's an elitist mindset sometimes where you look down on somebody that may not have what somebody else has. And not everybody just says, you know what, I want to be fat and lazy, I want to sit in my bed, I want to do nothing, and I deserve everything. There are some people that are that way. But there are plenty of hardworking people throughout the ages of time that tried their best to do everything to make things work, and it just didn't happen. You may be one of those people, and that is okay. You are just as human as somebody who had everything in their life touched like the goose that laid the golden egg. You are no different. Don't let anyone ever make you feel less than because you could not afford something that is basically something you can't take with you when you die. If this was a Fantastic Four #1 9.8, if I died tomorrow, even if they put it in my grave, what would it mean to me? If I had to sell everything I owned to get this book, I would be an idiot. Because in the end, this is just plastic with a bunch of pieces of paper and a couple of staples. It does not define me as a human being. So if somebody out there, or anybody, whether it's comics, whether it's cars, whether it's collectibles, whether it's your clothing, don't ever let anyone make you feel bad because you know what? Maybe you couldn't afford a $5,000 fancy suit and can only afford one from a mom and pop thrift shop for $25. And I'll tell you, and this brings up an example. When I was in my late teens to early 20s, I was trying to figure out where I was going in life. And at the time, I was around 19. I was working for a carpet and linoleum place. And I was working with this one guy, I don't remember his name. But we were doing carpet and we had a lot of free time. And he started talking about religion. And I don't remember what he said, but I remember he said things that inspired me to say, you know what, I'm going to go to a church and I'm going to try and maybe see what it's about. Because I am always into trying different things and at least giving something an opportunity. So I went to this local, what was ending up like a gospel kind of church. I went there by myself. And I just had a very cheap little suit that I wore. And this was around 1999, 1998. And I remember it like it was yesterday. That the pastor was telling people that many people were underdressed and it was disrespectful. And I sat there and say, okay, you're supposed to be a priest. This is supposed to be a church where it's supposed to be about loving and seeking a higher power. And you're talking about how if you're not dressed to the T, you shouldn't be there? Well, what if somebody couldn't afford a suit? What if all they had was jeans and a t-shirt because that was the last article of clothing they had left? Because maybe their mother and father died and left them with nothing. Or maybe they just lost their job and couldn't afford anything other than the rent and food to put in their mouth. And they didn't have the money to buy a fancy tie and a fancy suit. Did that mean they weren't worthy of going to church and seeking a savior? Or seeking love or acceptance? I never went back. Because I thought that was a disgusting thing to say. There are going to be many people in your life who will judge you for who you are, what you do, what you believe in. It is up to you to have the strength to allow people to have their right to say it. Because I will never stifle anybody's right. Whether I agree or disagree with somebody is one thing, but they have the right to say it. But I have the right to not accept it or not let it influence me if it does not serve me. Now, if somebody gave advice and I listened to it, I'm like, you know what? That makes sense for me. And I'm going to listen to this more. And I think I agree with what that person's doing and saying. Then that's wonderful. But if you maybe like a person and they say advice that is not helpful to you and maybe even harmful to you, don't patronize that person. You don't call them out. You don't make fun of them. You don't do the wrong thing. But you could say, you know what? I respectfully disagree with what you're saying. They have the right to say it. But don't ever let anybody make you feel bad because they don't know your situation. You know, how many people, especially with the economy, and it's going to get worse before it gets better, how many people may have lost their jobs or had to get a lower pay and may not be able to afford to buy the books they once were able to afford, but still want to do it because the hobby maybe gives them a chance to have a moment of joy in their life that they didn't have. Because maybe they're divorced, or maybe they're in a fight with their spouse, or maybe they're lonely and never found anybody, or maybe they lost somebody they cared about, and their whole world is crumbling around them, and they just need one thing to make them happy. And maybe somebody saw a fantastic number 1 that they've always wanted to have, and was able to afford a lower grade book, and it made them happier than anything for that moment. And somebody comes along and says, why the hell did you get that? What is wrong with you? Why would you settle for such low garbage? I would never do that. Now, I'm not suggesting anybody out there saying that, because I'm doing an extreme version of things. But I think you understand my point. Everybody's allowed to make their opinions, but it doesn't mean that they're right. And at the very least, it doesn't mean they're right for your situation. Let's say there's 8 billion people on the planet. I don't care if 999,999,999,999 people saw this book and said, I would never touch it. I'm the one that said I would touch it. And that's all that matters. And every book that I showed you, if I sold right now, which I'm not going to, I could make double, triple, and even more profit on every single one of them. And because they're low grade, I will sell them very quickly. So to me, is low grade better than no grade? For me, 100% yes. Because it means I get to own it. Does that mean it should apply to you? That's for you to decide. But if you let others influence you just because you like them or just because you don't like them in a way that contradicts what will be beneficial for you, that's the beauty of free will, my friends. Sometimes you could do the right thing, sometimes you could do the wrong thing, and sometimes you could do nothing. but there are always consequences for your actions and inactions. So there is no right answer to this question. Anybody that tells you that their answer is the right answer is preaching. And they may believe it to be true. And it may be true for them. But that doesn't make it true for you. And if you let others, it's like any peer pressure when you were in school, where somebody made you feel like, oh, if you want to be one of the cool kids, you got to do this. I remember one of my friends I was best friends with in 3rd grade, and one day he decided to jump off a roof in front of a bunch of girls, broke his leg, and he became one of the cool kids. Never spoke to me again. Even though before he became the cool kid, I was one of the only people that hung out with him. Went to his house, we were friends. People bullied him, and I stood by his side. But then all of a sudden, one day he decided, I don't remember why, well, I'm sure he did it because he thought it was cool. But I wasn't there when it happened. But he jumped off a roof in front of a bunch of girls. He broke his leg, went into school with a cast, and all of a sudden he became the cool kid. Never talked to me again. I say good riddance, because then that person was never really my friend. And I was always there for him before he became popular, and now I was no longer needed because I wasn't somebody that was popular. And if it took me to be dumb enough to jump off a roof and potentially kill myself or break my leg to become popular, I don't need it. Quality over quantity. So, low grade is better than no grade. Does it work for you? Don't be ashamed to say yes, and don't be ashamed to say no, because both answers are right. This is the thing that many people cannot understand when it comes to reality. You can have two people experience the same situation and have opposite opinions or results and still both be right. The problem in this world is everybody's trying to convince the other one that their truth has to be your truth. And I've used this example before, but it's been a while, so I'll use it again to prove my point. You have two people. They're sitting in the front seat of a roller coaster. Let's say there's a guy on the left. Let's say there's a girl on the right. Because there's only two genders. I'm sure I'll hear something from somebody on that one. Okay, they're on the roller coaster. They're on the same ride. They're in the same car, going the same speed, at the same place, at the same time. The gentleman to the left is scared out of his mind, sick to his stomach, is horrified at how scary the ride is, wants to get off, is crying how bad it is. I want to get off this ride. He's holding on for dear life. The girl to the right is having the time of her life. She's enjoying the rush of going up and down and side to side and the wind blushing through her hair. She's having the time of her life, laughing hysterical, putting her hands in the air, no fears, no cares, just enjoying the fun ride. They're both experiencing the same ride, but they're experiencing it from their own perspective. So the guy who got sick and was scared was right. The girl who was on the same ride, in the same car, at the same time, was having fun, and she was right. Here's where the world becomes a problem. The guy that's sick is saying to the girl having fun, "Are you crazy? That was horrible. What's wrong with you? I was ready to throw up. You should hate that ride because I hated that ride. Please do what I do so I feel justified in my feeling." And the girl says, "No, you're crazy. That was the best time of my life. How could you be sick? I wasn't sick. I put my hands in the air. I wasn't afraid. You shouldn't be scared. You should have fun." No, if the person was sick, they have the right to be sick. If the person was scared, they have the right to be scared. If the person over here was having fun in the time of their life, they have the right to have the time of their life and experience it as fun. But it was the same thing happening at the same time, both different results. They are both true. Stop trying to convince the other person what your experience is. Because you never know if somebody cuts you off in the middle of the road and you want to curse them out. You never think about, well, what if that person is driving recklessly because maybe they're late for their job, and if they don't get there on time, they're going to lose their job, and then they're not going to pay for their family's food, and they're going to lose their house, and they're already stressed out as it is, and they have $20 in their bank account, and they're just not thinking straight. They just need to go to work. Or what if somebody in that car is dying, and they need to get them to the hospital as quick as they can, so they're not focusing on proper speed limits and proper turn signals? You don't know about a person's life experience unless you live it. So anybody that criticizes anybody for their lifestyle choices without knowing the context of their being is somebody that may think they're smart, but is not smart enough to say everybody's life is different, and you can have 100 people look at the same situation, and 100 people will see it 100 different ways, and every one of them could be right. And that's not including those who will fabricate or flat out lie about a situation, could maybe boost up their own livelihood. So I think I've spoken about this enough. 30 people have viewed this video. 22 people liked it. Collect what makes you happy. Collect what you can afford. And don't give a damn about what anybody else thinks about it. Now, of course, you can listen to people's opinions. You may even respect them, or even value them and cherish them. But don't let them, if you like collecting lower grade because that's all you can afford, or maybe you just don't want to spend lots of money, don't let anybody say, well, I was going to do it, but everybody else is mocking me, and everybody else is making fun of me, and everybody else says they wouldn't do it, so I'm not going to do it. And maybe miss out on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I've wanted Hulk #1 for years. And every time a book would come up, it would be unobtainium. I had a moment where I was able to get a low-grade book within a price range that I can afford, and I jumped at the chance. I actually had to borrow money from my mother, and my wife helped to pay for part of it, so I can afford it at that moment, because it was going to end that day. Or it was the next day, I believe. I don't remember if it was that same day or the next day. But now I own Hulk #1, first appearance of the Hulk. Who knows, maybe one day I'll get an upgrade. Or maybe I'll never get an upgrade, and maybe the book becomes more and more valuable, and maybe because there is going to be a World War Hulk movie coming out, let's say they get their poop together in Disney, I don't hold my breath for it, but let's assume by that point they maybe sold the rights to somebody else, or they get their act together, and it's one of the best movies in years. You think that book's going to stay cheap? You think it's going to get lower, or you think it's going to raise higher? And maybe that 0.5 is now a $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 book. Those who waited now either have to miss out on it forever or pay triple the amount to acquire it. Makes no sense to me. If an opportunity arrives and I see it as an opportunity, I'm going to get it. You may not agree, and I thank God for people like that, because that's one less person that's going to try and outbid me to get something that I know I am going to turn into gold. I've seen so many people get higher grade books and overpay for them to get them. Makes no sense to me. If you're spending $95,000 on a book and make a $5,000 profit, you wasted your time and could have used that money elsewhere. I could have bought $95,000 worth of $1,000 books that ended up I could sell for $2,000, sell them quicker, and make a heck of a lot more profit faster. Because like I said, if you look on eBay right now, it's been there now going on 10 years. Maybe a little bit less. Let's say 8 years. Action Comics, I think it's 1 through 5. I think they're selling it for either $300,000 or $500,000. I forget what it is. No one's buying it. No one has bought it. It's been there since before I moved to Florida when I was living in New York. So minimum of 4 years it's been on eBay. 10-day listings. Relisted every 10 days. For 4+ years. And it hasn't sold. That money is in limbo. So it doesn't matter what you paid for it if you can't sell it. How many people would love to own those? and yet no takers. So what good is a high grade anything if it's to the point where very few people can afford it? Now just imagine, because you know how many criminals and jerks there are on eBay that will say they never got a package. Just imagine if you sold a $400,000 book on eBay. You mail it to them, and they say that it never arrived. Or they opened the box and nothing was in it. And eBay ends up giving them their money back. You don't think that's going to sting tremendously? And sadly, there are unfortunate people out there that would do something like that. You know what? If you have a $1,000 book, that may sting, but it wouldn't be devastating like losing $500,000. And again, that's not something that happens all the time, but it can happen. So I think I've said enough. Whether you agree with it or not is up to you. Whether you like me or not, that's up to you. As far as the person that made the video, like I said, I'm not mentioning their name. I have no ill will towards the individual. I think he's a very high-class person that has also a high-class work ethic. I just do not agree with what people told me about it. Again, I'm not going to watch the video. I don't watch videos from people I just don't watch. I'm not going to go any deeper than that. I explained the scenario earlier, so if you haven't seen it, you can rewind this and watch the part where I explain the origin of the situation. They have the right to make that opinion, and that opinion may be right for them. You may like the person, you may love the person, you may follow every word he says, but that doesn't mean that you have to follow the word of advice that may be the opposite of what you believe. Now, I'm not saying to curse anybody out. I'm not saying for anybody to spread any hate. Because God knows, I know what that's like, because I've had many people spread hate towards me unwarranted. There are still people to this day that hate me, and I've done nothing to anyone since I shut down my old channel back in about 2017. People are allowed to think and feel the way they want. So you can agree, you could disagree, you can like me, you can hate me. I don't care. I mean, of course I care if you like me, but I don't care if you hate me, because if you're somebody that's watching my video and you hate me, well, then you're just wasting your time making yourself angry watching something you don't enjoy. Hearing advice that you may agree with, but would not be willing to admit that you believe in it, just for the fact that you may not like what my thoughts were from previous videos. That's fine. So I'd love to know what your opinion is. I don't want any hate going towards anybody. I don't want anybody to, after this, even if there is a rebuttal to the video, I don't want people messaging me and emailing me or placing comments, because I'm not interested after this point. I've said what I have to say. If that person wants to take it to another level, that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, I made my opinion on this, and it's done. So I will respectfully ask even the people that love my channel and love what I do, if there are any rebuttals to this video that are negative or nasty or accusing or whatever, don't even bother to tell me, because I'm just too old for drama. I just think this is an important thing, because I know there are people that influence others that could actually make them miss out on what could have been a lifetime or once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, just because it may not have been a grade that other people think is satisfactory enough. I mean, where does low grade stop? Is it a 2.0? Is it a 3.0? Is it a 1.5? No, my Fantastic Four #1 that's signed by Stan Lee is a 2.5 that I spent $5,000 on. I could turn around and sell that for $12,000 to $14,000 right now. Is that a bad investment because it's only a 2.5? So where do you draw the line? What's low grade? Some people will say, well, low grade is a 2. Well, some will say, well, no, a low grade to me is, it's got to be higher than a 4.5. So even people that would say, talk about low grade, they'll have their limits. So what's the right number? Is it only a 1.8 or lower? Is it a 2.0? Is it a 2.5? What is considered low grade? Is a 9.0 considered low grade? See what I mean when you get into this? It's just silly. Buy what you love. Buy what you can afford. Do not ever put your family's well-being over your own personal gratification to make others pat you on the back and say, good job. Because then you have to question why you're doing what you're doing. Are you doing it because it makes you happy? Or is what makes you happy other people trying to make you happy? Or are you miserable because you're afraid of what other people may think of you? Now, if you're doing wrong things, then yeah, you should be afraid of that. If you're a murderer or a person that does really bad things to underage people, then yeah, you should be very afraid of what people will think of you because you're disgusting. But if you're just collecting low-grade books because that's all you can afford or that's all you want, just so you could say you own it, or it was an opportunity you just couldn't pass up, even at a lower grade, who cares what anybody else thinks? It's just their opinion. Everybody has one. Opinions are like rear ends. Everybody has one and they all stink. I've said enough. If you want to like the video, that's great. If you don't want to like it and hit the thumbs down, by all means, there are people that do it every video. I'd love to know what you think in the comments section. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. But if anything, I want to thank this individual for giving me a reason to make a video, because I have not made a video other than the unboxings of my PGX books. So in that sense, I'm glad this video topic came up, and I'm glad the people that emailed me and left comments did so, because it gave me an opportunity to make a video that some of you enjoy. So good things can come out of any situation. It always depends on how you look at them. Let me know what you think. And oh, by the way, this is the AI art that I created to make this thumbnail. And of course, it's not going to show it right away because I hit the wrong button. But I put it in the beginning, and it will also be the thumbnail of this video. So all the thumbnails I do are my AI art, so I would love to hear your opinion of what you think. And don't forget, it is not you. It is not I. There it is. It's we love comics, even if they are low grade. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget to have your friends spayed or neutered. I'll see you next time, everybody.